first 48 girls at EHS, which is commemorating Women's History Month, as well as the 25th year of coeducation at Episcopal. I'm so excited that these 5 members of the class of the first 48 are here with us today. But before I ask them to introduce themselves, I want to give everyone a little bit of background about how coeducation at Episcopal came to be. And much of what I'm about to tell you comes directly from Mr. Sandy Ainsley, who was the headmaster of EHS from 1984 to 1998. He is also the grandfather of current seniors, your classmates John and Hayne Ainsley. Mr. Ainsley and I spoke the other day, during which time he told me his firsthand account of how coeducation came to EHS. The coeducation question had been asked for many years, and Mr. Hoxton, the head of school prior to Mr. Ainsley, always liked to say, "That is a great question for the next headmaster." So Mr. Ainsley decided, since he was that next headmaster, that the question needed to be called. Members of the board and other interested constituencies formed the Committee on Coeducation in 1987. For 2 years, that committee researched other schools that had transitioned from all boys to co-ed and deliberated on what would be best for EHS. In the spring of 1989, the board met in Charleston, South Carolina for a vote. Mr. George Logan, the head of the board at the time, asked every person in the room to stand and explain why they would be voting the way that they did. Mr. Ainsley described this scene as one of the most intense of his life. Several men were overcome by emotion, so opposed were they to the idea of EHS going co-ed. But many more board members were in favor. In the end, the vote was 17 in favor and 7 against. There was some discussion as to whether the vote should be amended to appear unanimous to the outside world, but the honor code was invoked during the discussion, and it was decided that the vote would be made public just as it was, and that the school was strong enough to be able to show some dissent in this important matter. In the winter of 1990, the administration, the faculty, and the students began preparing for coeducation to begin a year and a half hence. Almost unanimously, the faculty was in favor of coeducation, but the students were not. Committees were formed on everything under the sun, and many educational consultants were brought in to help the faculty understand the way girls learned, communicated, and lived, and how there might be differences between boys and girls in those ways. Mr. Ainsley described some of the debates around school traditions. Would girls be cheerleaders? Would they be waiters? And the answer, of course, was yes. The school continued to receive critical feedback from alumni. Mr. Ainsley received 2 letters from alumni asking, in all seriousness, what would become of the honor code now that girls would be students at the school? Yes. Mr. Ainsley described his response, which his administrative assistant later advised him to delete, and which I won't go into here, but suffice it to say that it was strongly worded. The school hired many women faculty members in order to teach, staff the dorm, coach the teams, and serve as role models for the girls. Our own Mrs. Castle was one of those first female faculty members. By the time girls arrived, 1/3 of the faculty was female. In the fall of 1991, the first 48 girls arrived and moved into Evans dorm. Though life was not always easy for them at the beginning, the girls made their mark right away. At the end of the first year, several girls won the top academic prizes. By the 3rd year, the field hockey team had won the ISL championship, and Lane Eastland had been named first female head monitor. And by the 4th year, Gretchen Bird, who's here with us today, had been named the first female head of the honor committee. Now I'm going to read an excerpt of the letter that went from Mr. Ainsley and the president of what was then called the Old Boys Council to all alumni, announcing the decision to admit young women to EHS. This is the end of the letter. Episcopal High School has existed to mold the character of young men by enabling them to develop spiritually, intellectually, socially, and athletically. In composite, this developmental process builds strong leadership qualities in its students. The decision to admit young women is philosophical in nature and rests squarely on the principle that EHS should extend its mission to include young women who will, likewise, ascend to leadership roles in our society. The high school can execute its mission in a co-educational setting, and the trustees, faculty, and administration are determined to take every reasonable step to ensure that the school takes full advantage of this opportunity. A full summary of the committee's report will be forwarded in the near future. For 150 years, EHS has been a leading institution of learning and development. With your continued understanding and support, the next 150 years promise to be just as successful. And that was said in 1989. So I'd like now to turn to our panel. I'm going to come sit with them, and we're just going to talk a little bit about what that time was like for them in that very first year of coeducation at the school. Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. If you all would just introduce yourselves and say a little bit about where you were from when you came here as students. Well, first your name, where you were from, where you went after the high school, and then where you're living now and what you're doing. That would be great. Amy?
Hi, my name, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Amy Kupik, and I was in the class, I guess I'm the only 94 graduate here. I was attending Notre Dame Academy, which is now called Middleburg Academy, I believe. And my parents knew about Episcopal becoming co-ed and brought home an application and instructed me to fill it out. So that's how I found out about Episcopal going co-ed. I graduated and went to Sewanee for college, and upon graduation I started working in PNIC. Rick Wilcox was my first boss, and I was in the Alumni Development Office for 3 years before moving to Atlanta and taking a job at a Montessori school, where I found my calling as a Montessori educator. And right now I am the Montessori Program Coordinator at Arlington Montessori House, and my family lives in Alexandria. And I have a 7-week-old who's somewhere here with Dana Ringers. So.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Bird. I'm from Berryville, Virginia. I came to Episcopal. My elementary school was called Powhatan School, which was a rival school of Amy's elementary school. And my dad actually went to Woodbury, and I believe they had a similar vote of alumni back in the day, and he voted no for coeducation. And my headmaster at my elementary school actually went to Episcopal, and I remember looking through my dad's yearbook with him, Woodbury, and my sister and I always wanted to go to boarding school, and so I applied to Episcopal. My dad said I could go to the second best school in the South. And just I remember coming here and meeting Mr. Walker and having my interview, and never looked back. And after graduating from Episcopal, I went to UVA. I was with Sarah. Then I lived in San Francisco for a while and went to University of Richmond for law school, and now live in Richmond and practice law.
Sorry, I might have to turn around.
All right, can you hear me? All right. I'm Sarah Baltimore McElwain, and I'm originally from Washington, North Carolina. So I have any North Carolinians in the house today? Right. And I had 2 neighbors who were boys that went to Woodbury Forest, and another neighbor who went to Lawrenceville. And I had never considered boarding school, wasn't on my radar until all of my friends in my neighborhood left me for boarding school. So I explored Episcopal at the time, was taking their first girls in Lawrenceville, and chose Episcopal because I was 13 and there was going to be a 5-to-1 ratio of boys to girls. And I thought that, was going to be in my favor. So I came to Episcopal. Okay. And after Episcopal, I went on to Virginia for profession. And after that, moved back to DC, to the DC area, and I worked for a company called the Advisory Board, which is healthcare, higher education consulting. Was there for about 17 years, off and on. Lived in Richmond for a little bit, in London, and then back to Alexandria. So I get to go to Bradley Center anytime I want now, not within the hours that it used to be, but I'm thrilled to be here. So excited to see lots of new and exciting faces today.
So is it just Preston? So I'm Comer Ware, and I am originally from Hickory, North Carolina. My love affair with Episcopal High School probably started with my grandfather, who went here, and then all of my uncles. My brother graduated the year before I got here.
And as soon as my grandfather said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that Episcopal is going co-ed," and my brother said, "You're never going to go there," I said, "I'm absolutely going there," and applied. I also applied to Madeira and Lawrenceville and St. Andrews and some others, but it was very clear as soon as I walked on campus, I'm very defiant and have been since birth, that I would be going to Episcopal to prove my brother wrong. And loved every minute of it. Let's see, what was the next topic? Where am I now? College. So after Episcopal, thanks to my roommate of 4 years here at Episcopal, I went to Princeton University. That was a tough choice, but she was actually the one that talked me into it. Almost ended up with these ladies at UVA. I would have loved every minute. And then after school there, I moved around quite a bit, but ultimately landed back in North Carolina. I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina now. I work in the furniture industry, and actually work for my brother. Can't believe it. But I run marketing for, it's called Rock House Farm, a family of brands, and so we own several furniture companies based out of Pickering, North Carolina.
Hi, I'm Patrice Williams. Let's see, I am from Sandy Spring, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes outside of DC. So I'm not new to this area. I have 3 older brothers, a younger sister, it's her right there. So my brothers went here. So I had been visiting this campus probably since I was in elementary school. So that was kind of normal to me. And then, so be it, you know, right when I was ready for high school, they decided to let girls in. I hadn't heard that story. I thought it was more about me, but it was just, I guess not. But so I just went. I had the choice to go to public school, which it's a great public school I would have gone to, or here, but I decided to try something new, and definitely glad I did. After here, I went to University of Maryland. I became a teacher. I taught 5th grade for about 5 years. And then I got married and we moved to New York City. And I decided I don't want to teach in New York City. So I didn't. And so I found an education company. So, and with that we work with districts nationwide to try to raise the graduation rates and help disconnected youth get to post-secondary. So then when we moved back down here, we're now back in Silver Spring, Maryland. I was able to keep my job, so I work from home 100%. And is that it?
Yeah, that's perfect. All right, thank you all. So why don't we start with just what was it like to be the first 48, to be such a small group of girls amongst so many boys that very first year?
Well, I'd just like to say, do you all remember the day we moved in?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first day,
My cameos in the Washington
yes,
Post.
we made the Washington Post. I think we were on the news. There was a lot of
Fanfare.
energy and hype, and so I think we just, and we had a lot of stuff to move into dorms. So there were a lot of helping hands, 250 helping hands for a lot of luggage, and I don't know. I just remember that first day. I think my heart raced the entire day.
Yeah.
I don't know. You all have any memories from that first day?
I think I remember that evening actually sitting down at one of our first, everyone on the dorm, all 48 of us kind of meetings, and looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? But as I said over lunch, it was, for me, coming to boarding school at all, anywhere, I was going to have that feeling. And so I remember looking around at all of y'all and thinking, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. They're just as brave as I am, and we're all in this together, and that was kind of my first takeaway.
Mm-hmm. It was shocking for me. As I said, I'm from Maryland. It was shocking. I didn't realize there was so naive, but I didn't realize there was such a difference between like the North and the South. Being from Maryland, right smack in the middle. So I came here and was just like, oh my God. Right? So it was a shock to me, it was, and you know, you hear a lot of their stories about, you know, people in their neighborhood who went to boarding school, and I didn't come from that, where no one really went to private school or boarding school. I mean, it wasn't like looked down upon, but just no one did it. So, so it was really kind of, I was a bit of an outlier in that sense. But so it was shocking. They couldn't have been more awesome, but it was definitely just a shock.
I remember walking in the dorm and realizing that there was one payphone for 24 girls on each floor, and thinking, well, these are going to be my people now. This is my family. I am never going to get to use that phone. There's so many times we're on lockdown. Like, I'm never going to talk to my parents again. But we were each other's people. I mean, we had to be each other's family. There wasn't a lot of communication out with our parents in those early days. I think even, you know, preparing for this, my mom said we weren't supposed to call you for about 6 weeks, really, to get you situated and oriented. They didn't want to reach out. So I'm sure that it's changed, but we had to be, and the faculty were amazing, but it was sort of baptism by fire for sure.
I remember that first day going to a cookout on the patio of Blackbird, and I just remember there being all these boys, but the senior class I thought was outstanding.
Not that way.
Not that one. But they, I think we all had our monitor, we just had Gray Jackson was a phenomenal monitor that we had, and each monitor had just a handful of us, and all the monitors and various members of the senior class just made a real effort to include us. I didn't feel any
Forgot about that.
specific negativity from the last all-male class.
That left with my brother.
Yeah. So what kinds of challenges did you face? Because those must have been inevitable in that first year.
Okay, I've got one.
Anything outside of normal high school angst?
I think in the first year for the girls, they tried really hard to make sure there was another girl in your class. But it sometimes didn't work out, because if you weren't in the higher level English or the higher level math, sometimes you were the only girl. And I think that was a challenge. But I think having gone through that, I can now feel pretty comfortable at any stage, you know, in your career down the road, walking in and sitting down in sort of a male-dominated environment and feeling comfortable in your own skin. And I think some of that is from the tangible experience that we had that first year, because sometimes as a girl, you may have been the only girl in your class. I think that was a challenge.
It was a mixed bag. Like it was hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there are some things that were hard that the school didn't foresee and didn't prepare for. But it wasn't hard every minute of every day. You know, there are a lot of great things. I have to say that the 48, strongest women you'll ever meet, hands down. I don't know if it's because of what we did or that's who they picked, you know? But no, there were things that were tough. Like you said, you had to hold your own in a class. You had to be the voice of the woman. You had to be the female voice. And we were, what, 14, 15?
Find a blazer for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. Exactly, you know? And so, yeah, I guess just it was a mix.
I think too, I remember athletically, I was an athlete, and I remember athletics was huge. We didn't have the Fine Arts Center, and Fine Arts wasn't, they did what they could to support fine arts in 91. And, having 48 girls come with a variety of different skill sets and interests. I remember Jenny Long was not interested in athletics, and she was an artist, and she had so many interests, and I maybe I'm speaking for her today, but for her it was really frustrating because there weren't any outlets that were really. She did what she could, but we had a certain, and I don't know, I'm sure there's similar requirements about athletics. Every student here has to participate, which for me was awesome. But I also remember thinking, because of the long history of athletics here and how strong it was, and that year our football team was pretty, I think they won the ISC, right? They were incredible. And so that was fun to have that much hype and energy to be able to participate in really fantastic football team and everything that came with it. But for us, we had 48 girls and we had to field every team against
Varsity team.
Varsity team.
yes, varsity teams. We were varsity basketball, yeah. But anyway, having
So we lost miserably that year. Every sport, every game, every match.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
it was really brutal. But yeah. So we had not only our internal sort of desire to prove to the boys that we were just as strong as they were on the field, but we also had to prove ourselves outside of this campus. And I remember that being something I really held on to. But it was subtle things happen. It's a change of culture that like we said, there's no way to prepare for every possible incident or conflict that might come up. But you having that highlight of no one thought about what our athletic teams and the confidence or lack thereof we would have to face or develop on our own, just to face the boys who were here, because there were just plenty of them that had their own thoughts about girls athletics, and we always wanted our Woodbury game, which is why Seminary Hill Cup is awesome, because we have. Do you guys know about Seminary? Okay, good. We have our Woodbury, but so that was that was an important lesson.
So Mr.
Call it
Hazelwood,
that.
yes, and he talked about that the other day on the phone. He was describing the meeting that he and Mr. Rice, the then athletic director, they went to the ISL AD's meeting to sort of petition Episcopal to be let into the ISL. And after a vote, Mr. Rice and Mr. Ainsley were in the hallway pacing, hoping that they would let Episcopal in. They agreed conditionally to let Episcopal in, but within 2 years, if success was not proven, we could have been booted out. So thank you for keeping us in the ISL within 2 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, by my senior year, we won everything.
We did, and the boys lost everything. Sorry,
But I mean, it's interesting actually that when you were talking about athletics, because all of that, right, being a student athlete or having that going on top of still at this school, football is king. So you were required to go to every single football game, and you were required to be at all of the mass meetings and really involved into that football team, regardless of whether that was your thing or not, or same for the guys, but here are as gals, you're also doing your own sport. It's like, well, they weren't required to come to any of our stuff. I mean, I can't think of a guy that ever came to one of our events, and that it's not. We supported each other, and that's kind of what I always took away was we certainly were there and went to all of the guys' events, but it wasn't necessarily the same case.
at least not that first year.
Yeah, that's true.
I do think that's a good thing. That's changed now. We have a lot of good support for a lot of athletic teams, girls and boys, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kinds of faculty support did you have? Did you feel, without naming names, but did you feel like there were a lot of people who were sort of rooting for you all amongst the faculty, and how did they show their support?
Yes, definitely. I was to bring a lot of female faculty in and to bring them in before we got here. I assume that was a strategic move. So that they were, you know, immersed and like ready to go by the time we got here. And it wasn't just the female. I mean, there's a lot of excellent like male faculty as well. But I felt like I had a lot of adults to lean on when I needed to.
I completely agree with that, and you know, some of my favorites I can recall are some of the tougher down, old crusty, you know, girl. You just wanted to win them over, right? And but they're, you know, just across the board. I think that the faculty was amazing. I can't even imagine the meetings that they were having and the things that they were seeing or hearing that we were probably oblivious to. And so how they were able to push us forward and challenge us at the same time as keep us shielded from some of the more negative stuff that I'm sure was being said.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic teachers and coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we did not do well athletically that first year, it wasn't because we didn't have awesome coaches. We had terrific coaches who made us work so hard, and there were small victories here and there.
We were in really good shape, right? Like, we may not have won, but they were like, these girls will be able to run for a long time. Yeah.
What about just the, you know, the lighter side of things, dorm life, you know, friends that you made, bonds that you shared? Like, can you tell us some stories about what that was like that first year?
Well, I have to start with the transition from the luncheon to here. I needed to use the restroom, and I went downstairs and I could hear chatter in the basement, and I thought, oh gosh, I wonder who's in there. And then all four are in the bathroom, and I felt like I was back on Evans. There's just something, you know, not that you go to bathrooms in packs, but that life. And I did say, well, do you have your shower caddies? I don't know if you guys still do that now, but I think just having
It's the shared experience.
it's the shared experience, yes.
So even if you're not all best friends all the time, what you have here is a shared experience, and that's a pretty extraordinary thing. This is an extension of your family, and I don't know that I appreciated that when I was here. But 3 weeks ago, I went to my year is knocking on 40 this year, and we went to New York for a night to celebrate one of our dear friends' 40th, who was also an original 48, and it was like nothing had changed. And those relationships persevere through time, and the people that you know and that you love and that are your friends here are still going to be some of your best friends when you're knocking on 40 and 60 and beyond. So proud of that.
Also, and this was pre-internet.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh God.
Yeah.
So like there was no distraction. We couldn't watch TV. We couldn't. So we just had to like.
Except for
Didn't we watch 90210?
The 90s.
Like sneak TVs and yeah. But so there was a lot of. I mean, all we did was talk and listen to music.
And eat.
And eat.
In order food to be delivered to a physical.
I mean, that is actually, when I think about, and when we were talking about the questions for this panel, I mean, the amount of change that happened from the time we were in high school to what it is now. I mean, I wrote my college applications on a Brother processor in the hall of one of these dorms with whiteout. And I think about like the work that I sent in to be reviewed and submitted for this, and it's like some of it was handwritten up the side. But now just the technology that you all have and have access to and use, I mean, my 10-year-old uses it like, I'm like, what are you doing that for? What is that app? But it's just, that is a huge leap forward, along with the coeducation and everything else that the high school has gone through. I mean, there's just been so much change.
Yeah. I'm just going to pause it. I see you all looking at this cartoon up here, which Gretchen shared with us yesterday over email, which is from, we think it's from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, but one of the newspapers that would have known Episcopal well from the early 90s. So clearly it was was making the news that Episcopal had gone co-ed. And here you can just see for yourself what that opinion was.
I have sort of a funny story. So after I graduated from Swanee and came back and worked here, my position was to be in charge of the class chairs of all of the alumni classes. So back to 1944, and there was somebody that I worked with. And the challenge that I faced was calling these old boys and saying, hi, my name's Amy Fannin, and I'm the class of 1994. And then, you know, hemming and hawing, like, are you sure about that? Or, you know, and then actually saying to me, and it was my absolute determination to win them over. There was a lot of winning over that we did. Yeah. And just wanting to win over these old boys who would say to me, well, I didn't want you girls there anyway. And just, you know, for me to, that was a challenge, it was a good growing opportunity. And I won them all over, eventually. Cooper Dawson, but he always loved us. But, so that was really interesting. I mean, when Gretchen shared this last night, I just chuckled because I thought about all of the conversations I had with various alum, and they would ask me, and fortunately I was able to get into great conversation with those who were willing to come to the other side of accepting girls in Episcopal, but this is not just a comic. Yeah.
We also had a lot of challenges with dress code. Very envious of all you ladies out there right now.
Yes, that's another document that it was way too long and detailed to share on the screen, but it is fascinating. I will share it if people are interested. Students, if you want to see what the 90s dress code was for the girls, but if you want to share some highlights of what that was like, I think one of the things I took away from reading that again was that there was a real desire the school had to make sure that things were equal. And so what that meant was girls wore blazers, just like the boys, and button downs, just like the boys. So there was a lot of parity, but of course that it's not, equality isn't always equity, and so it was just an interesting reminder of that.
If there was a question about the length of our skirts, we had to kneel down on the floor to make sure that the hem of the skirt touched the floor.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that now?
It was called skirt check. Skirt check.
I don't know if I remember. I think I may have the merits for having a too short skirt.
But you're really tall.
Yeah, very gangly at the top.
Yeah, I think our senior year, we started a petition to get rid of the blazers. I mean, obviously all the girls signed it. I think we got some boys. Took it into Carolyn Miller's office, showed it to her. She was like, great work, good effort. Nothing happened.
Can you all talk about how things changed over your time here? Did you see changes? I mean, by the time I arrived as a student, I'm a class of '97 graduate. I came in the fourth year that there were girls, so it felt very different probably from when you all arrived as such a small group. So how did things change over your 3 or 4 years here?
I think it felt different the second year.
Yeah.
But the second year, I don't know how many girls came in. It felt like there were twice as many girls. So we went from this very special, you guys are special, to, oh wow, a third of the school is girls.
Yes.
So.
I think our second year it went to 60-40. So that was a big jump from
It's a big jump.
5 to 1.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge testament to all those girls that came in after us because they did a lot of work too in terms of creating a culture and environment for coeducation. I think we got a lot of the sunshine on it, but I think they too did a tremendous amount of work in creating that. That probably goes a little bit more unspoken, but we were there to help shepherd them along with the other old students, but I think they had a pretty substantial impact as well.
Patrice, I'm wondering if you could talk to something that you spoke about and wrote about in the Alumni magazine this fall, which was not only were you one of the first 48 girls, but you were one girls of color at the school.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah. Well, there were 48 girls, and 4 of us were black, and that was it. There was no other race, anything. That was it. Okay, sorry, Ruth. Yeah. Okay, but there were 4 of us. Me and my friend Christine were freshmen, April was sophomore, and then Heather was a senior, and that was it. That was hard. That was really hard. I'll be honest. Just like I said, being the voice of a woman, so now here I am, 13 years old, I'm, voice of a woman, but now I'm also like the black person's voice as well, or the black, woman's voice as well. And it was hard, and as great as some of the faculty is and was, I don't think that as a whole they were prepared to back us up and support us the way we needed to be. There were lots of discussions in class that would end abruptly or fall silent or get loud. There were a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of, I can't tell you how many things, also not being Southern, how many things I experienced, and the moment would pass, and we'd be like, did they just say that? Like, what was that? And that, it was really hard. It was really hard. I cried to my dad a lot. It was hard. It was, I hope it's better now for you guys who are here. I had my brother was here. That helped a lot. My brother is incredible and very well liked and strong. So I was definitely off limits, in a way. So that helped. But no, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And my sister and I, my sister came 2 years later. And we still talk a lot about it to this day. My brother too. When we think about what the school means to us or the impact it had on us, it's very cyclical. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, it was great, it did so much for me. And sometimes I'm like, I didn't need to go through that. This is 1995, and I'm dealing with stuff where I felt like I was in the 60s. I had a faculty member a teacher say in class that racism ended in the 60s. You know what I mean? So it was hard. What else can I say to that? I hope the school's doing well. I'm going to do better to stay closer to ensure that they're doing well. And whatever I can do to help, or my family, or the other girls and boys that went to school with me, let me know, because I need to do better.
Thanks, Nikki. So, sort of to end, could you all just say a few words about what your takeaways are about Episcopal High School and what that experience meant to you going forward in your life? Like, what are the lessons learned? This is a big question.
So many.
Kind of a loaded one.
I'll follow Patrice, that there was definitely a few years after I left here that I kind of avoided. I think high school is tough, no matter who you are, but there was definitely a lot of weight coming out of this school. And I don't know that I realized it really until I got through college and looked around at, the group of people that I was friends with, and maybe, and you just start taking stock of situations and moments that you had in your life. But for me, I will say that certain individuals, it's true on any, and I think we talked about community earlier, those individuals, God, they're like touchstones.
I think Episcopal taught me that perfection is boring. I think I came in here striving to do everything 100%, And what I learned was that that's actually pretty limiting. Like, if you're never willing to take a risk, you only want to do what's safe, you only want to stay on the straight and narrow, at the end of the day, you're not going to grow as a student, you're not going to grow as a friend, you're not going to grow emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. And this was a safe place, at least from my experience, to take some risks, to learn to be persistent, to learn to be resilient, to learn to fail, and get back up and try another way to work it out. It was not pretty, it was ugly sometimes, and no one escapes high school unscathed. But I can tell you, so many years down the road, like if you can just wake up every day and be gracious and thoughtful and kind, you will knock 99% of life's tests out of the water. You've already done it. And this is a great place to learn to hone those skills. And I would encourage you to try and get out of that perfectionism box. For me, that was the big lesson here.
Well, I love my Episcopal experience. I look back on it and am extremely grateful to my parents for giving me this opportunity. And there's so many takeaways that the faculty, some of my coaches, some of the opportunities that the school provided, and just how demanding and the work ethic it instills in you are outstanding. And I think one thing, and I honestly think about Episcopal multiple times a week because of, I don't know if you guys still have to hold doors. Do you guys still have to hold doors? I hold doors for people, I mean, they are 500 feet away and I'm still holding their doors. And it seems like such a small, silly thing, but treating all people with respect and being gracious and good manners. I think about Episcopal every time I can let that door slide. Oh no, I'm going to hold it. And I hold it and for the next person behind me. So I echo everything Sarah said. It was beautiful. Awesome.
I can't believe you just said that, because I was just having this discussion with my husband, who did not go to boarding school, who just thinks it's crazy that I went here, and certainly doesn't want my daughter to come here, because that's crazy. But we were just having a discussion about cultural changes and respect, and being mindful of what's around you, like lifting your head up from your smartphone, and being aware of how to interact and have conversations, and being an educator, even with young children, and this is very much a focus for me, is how to have those interpersonal skills, the ability to speak to anyone, and I'm talking about 3-year-olds here, but we were just having the conversation, and I told him about the door holding and how much of an impact that left on me as well, and how, my goodness, you just don't see that now, and to think about what that lesson is on the greater scale. It's not just about holding the door, but it's about respecting and being aware of others and practicing kindness and really connecting, because forget technology, forget about everything which is a beautiful thing, but at the end of the day, it's about connecting with people. And I think our experience being 48 on Evans, Evans for life, having that, all that time spent together in the Commons room, and having that first meeting where we were told it's not a democracy. And all the things, the toilet paper assembly that took place right here with all the boys and none of the girls, they thought that we had softer toilet paper that first year.
Maybe you should share this story.
Okay, all right. So there was an adjustment club, and it was held on a boys' dorm, so no girls were allowed to go on dorm. There's visitation
some
now, right?
visitation now, but
Some visitation. It was not happening in '91.
No, there were like clips on all the windows
Yes.
and dark on.
Yes, and yes, there were. you guys pick up on it at the beginning? I just, would hear this announcement, not know what it was really about. At any rate, it escalated to the point where there was an assembly in this space, and the boys all gathered to vent, chant. We weren't here. We were all on Evans listening and sort of peeking through the windows, like, what is happening in that space? But one of the complaints was that our toilet paper was softer than the boys. And we had better lighting because we had a vanity with like little Hollywood globes, and they didn't have that. So I'm sure there were other things that we were not privy to.
And the bowling alley.
Oh,
I'm kidding.
that was a rumor,
That
right?
was a rumor.
Yes, that we had a bowling alley in the bottom of Evans. We were that special. But anyway, I think, it is a funny story, but at the time, like, I remember being a little stressed out about the gathering and the venting and the frustration, and it seeped out of these walls. It wasn't just here and they left it. But I think just the community and the camaraderie that we experienced, I mean, it was all eyes were on us. We carried the weight of coeducation on our shoulders every day, and every slip up, which definitely happened, almost felt more compounded. And so I think my takeaway from my experience is, yes, like what I learned about respecting others and being mindful of manners and what it means to be a good person. I think that was, we were lucky on Evans because we had each other and opportunities to really develop that.
I learned to multitask. I learned how to take a power nap. I learned to work hard physically, like athletically. Don't think I've ever worked that hard. And I learned to communicate, to speak up for myself. When I say communicate, like whether, I guess maybe you call it like code switching now, but whether I'm, speaking to like, the ladies in the kitchen or someone like working on my dorm or the headmaster or whatever alumni comes in or whatever panel you're grabbed to all of a sudden be on at any given moment. So I just kind of learned to represent us and myself at a physical and stuff.
It's interesting actually because high school is that one time in your life where you really kind of want to just disappear, right? You're like, oh, just let me slide through. And there wasn't a lady in that first 48 that was able to do that, because we were talking over lunch as well about just the amount of applicants that you guys have, or maybe that's after lunch, coming into the high school and the number of people that are applying now. And it's sort of, it's 50-50. It's no big deal, right? Like who the girls are going to be, who the guys are going to be. But, out of that 48, like, you could not disappear. And so there was a lot of that. And I think I definitely did learn how to turn it on, how to perform a little bit. And, so some of that is just being at the high school and you learn how to get along and how not to get demerits. Some of us learn it quicker than others. But it was just that that polish, if you will, of knowing that you're always on. Definitely.
Thank you all so much. Can we have a round of applause? We have about 5 minutes for questions. If there are any questions, I'm sure they would love to answer. So if you have a question, if you would raise your hand and I'll call on you and just stand to state your question. Yes.
So I have a question sort of for Gretchen and for all of you. When you had the first female head monitor and then when you were the first head of the honor committee, how did the student body react to that?
Did everyone hear that question? Okay. The question was, how did the student body react to having the first female head monitor and the first female head of the honor committee, who was Gretchen? So Gretchen's going to answer that.
Okay. Well,
I assume it's still done this way today, but honor committee, when we were at Episcopal, it was student elected. So our peers elected us. And Patrice was on the honor committee, Sarah was on the honor committee, Comer was a monitor, Amy was a year ahead of us. So and actually, when we were, our senior year, the honor committee was 6 girls, 2 boys. So I think, you know, that alone speaks volumes. I didn't notice anything, any negativity as far as having so many girls on the honor committee.
And when Lane Eastland she's my year, she was head monitor, I just remember being just so psyched. You know, like she was absolutely the person for that position, so it just seemed like, of course, Lane is going to be the
You
head
also have to
monitor.
remember, like, as the boys came in, they didn't know any different. So, like, the boys were freshmen with me, they didn't know any different. So, you know what I mean? It didn't take long for that culture to really change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's still misogyny, but it wasn't that, like, well, it used to go this way.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I always, when I tell people about our cheers, kill, kill, hate, hate, murder, murder, mutilate. What's
Is that one who phased out? Well,
Comer was one of the first female cheerleaders. There she is. Evie and Comer. Evie was her roommate. So it was interesting joining an all-boys school where the cheers and the cheerleading was definitely maintained that masculinity. Maybe Comer can speak to it.
I actually think the one that always got me was pursue them, make them a Lucas ball. And I'm like, what high school cheerleading team uses a multi-syllabic word to cheer? Like, really? But there was just some crazy, like, stuff that was just part of the,
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Yes, Gabby.
Were there any specific traditions or events that you were left out of or felt like you couldn't participate in?
So the question was, were there any events or traditions that the girls were left out of or felt they couldn't participate in?
Okay.
Now that we're warmed up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm reluctant to say this because this came to me while I was sitting up here, but maybe some of you will remember that Liz Lapano, didn't she walk on to the golf team?
She did.
Yes.
So you had a all-male golf team with Liz Lapano, who I believe went on to play golf at Duke. I mean, she was that good, so she was given that opportunity.
There weren't really structured things necessarily that we would miss out on, but it was certainly more difficult for us to get off our dorms, and some of the pranks that would happen. We had one teacher who was the soccer coach and a math teacher, and he had this teeny tiny car. And whenever the soccer team would have a home game, his car would end up in the soccer goal. It would end up in the weirdest places on campus, and everybody would be like, "Where's Mr. Stubbs' car today?" So we always felt like we could never get out of our dorms to do any of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Because we had our rights.
It's true.
I take that back. This is not Mr. Stubbs.
It wasn't Mr.
All right. So maybe one more since we're on such a roll. Les Mace.
Were there any things or traditions or groups that you guys started as we were the first 48?
Oh, yeah.
So were there any traditions or clubs or things that they started as the first 48?
I I assume we started the white dresses at graduation and the roses, didn't we?
Yeah.
The
Sorry,
rose
everyone.
ceremony. Yeah. Yeah. That was just because another school did it, so we figured we'd do the same.
Salad bar?
Salad bar. Salad bar.
Because we had a lot of seated dinners. I was telling somebody this at lunch. We had a lot of seated dinners most of our time at Episcopal. And it was great because you rotated through various teachers and you were with various different classes and that sort of thing. But one of the remnants of hazing was still there. And I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's called Boss. And so desserts would come around, and if it was a bad dessert, the new boys and new girls had to eat them all. And if they were good desserts, we weren't allowed to eat them.
And we had the staff plates too, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things, just if I can jump in, as someone who followed you all, was that while this wasn't new, it wasn't new to have monitors, it was new to have female monitors. And so you all had male monitors, seniors who were boys, were your guides for that first year. And then quickly you all became the guides. Homer, you were my monitor. And I still remember the letter you sent me over the summer. And it meant so much to have, for the younger crew coming behind you, to have you all in place. So that was something you did.
You just reminded me, I don't know that the boys did this on their athletic teams, but we did a lot of spirit and sort of like writing notes and putting things to sort of psych everybody out with the game. So I don't know if that still continues. Oh, good. I like all the head nodding here. Yeah. So.
I think something that we kind of, like, you mentioned, like, hazing. I know that was on its way out, but I think we also kind of held that, because there are some things that, you say to a girl and we're like, no. I'm not going to do that. We did definitely kind of put our foot down, and that was a change.
All right. Thank you all so much. Do a quick picture of everyone here just to commemorate this event. So how do we want to do this? Okay, so we're going to have, if everybody would come, students